I want to come back to this, but Sami, the strengths and significance of the Geneva process in your view?
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to participate in the Middle East Institute here, and thank for the Swiss that for their support most of the time for not only for the Geneva Initiative by itself, but for the peace process as a whole. Geneva had many significant things that we have to bear in mind. One is the team who worked in achieving Geneva were in Camp David. They were officials, both sides. And unfortunately, we did not agree in Camp David, but after that, most of them, you know, when we gathered together, we had some agreement when we called the Geneva Initiative. The question about this, why we did not succeed in Camp David there, I think you, Mr. Miller, you put it bluntly in one of your statements there. You said most of the advisors for Mr. Clinton was playing the role of lawyer for Israel. That I read it in one of the articles. You were really not acting in the sense of a broker to strike a deal between the Palestinians and the Israelis. You were siding by the Israeli side most of the time. And this proved to me till now that this is the case, that the case of the United States of America in getting into serious about what the Palestinians and the Israelis can achieve is still not there. The Geneva Initiative, like I said, both teams were in Camp David. They were engaged officially in the process. And yet, we could not achieve anything. But after that, after people, they left their office, and the failure of Geneva, another thing was important that Yussi mentioned, that the time at that time was very difficult for us, even more difficult than now it is for this. But still, we managed to work out something. Secondly, is we tried to tell our people and the Israeli people that it's not difficult to reach an agreement. Those are the guidelines, and we went into details in order not to make any doubts about any of the subjects left behind us. To tell the leadership, please take your time, read it, and think about it. If you like it, fine with us. If there are missing elements that were not there, please tell us about it, and then we can work it out more and more details till we get to a final agreement. Till now, we did not see the official side from, I can say from the Israeli side for a simple reason, because we, the team who worked with Yasser Arafat at that time, he backed us up for this initiative. He sent his representative to Geneva in the inauguration of the initiative and made a speech there. He was fully aware of what we are doing, and he was accepting what we achieved within that agreement. In the contrary, from the Israeli side, the result of the Geneva Accord, unfortunately, and I think this is not known for many of the politicians, it was said by Sharon himself, it was said by his advisor, Dov Weissglass, that said the result of the Geneva made the Israeli, Sharon made his decision for a unilateral withdrawal from Gaza. Now, the setback of the Geneva, that we did not draw enough attention of the broker, which is the United States. We still remember, you see, when we came here to the State Department and Mr. Colin Powell was there, we had a meeting with him, with all of us, almost the teams, and we could see the understanding from his side to the Geneva Accord. And one of his assistants, I don't want to mention names, he said, well, everything almost fine except one issue that I didn't like, which is the security issue. Was not enough security issue for the Israelis in the Geneva Accord. And for our surprise, the one who answered him was the head of the army of Israel, which is Amnon Shahak. And he told him that everything for the security of Israel is in that document. So that will show you that we, the people, we are the ones who were engaged in the trying to get to real peace, sustainable peace, which is very important, because I know some will say maybe the swap was not enough and we need more. Maybe the refugee issue was not the right thing, because from our side, our people, they accused us of giving the right of the refugees. From the Israeli side, Sharon, he's told them that you acknowledge the right of the refugees, return of refugees. So what we really failed to acknowledge to our leadership in both sides, that this, take your time and look at it in depth. And we need the broker, which is the United States of America, headed the quartet, also to look in depth for this document and to try to find their way, especially at this time. It is a difficult time, we know. We did not agree with those who will say it's a stalemate, don't do anything, it's hopeless to do anything for this year, etc., etc. I'm very grateful to Ambassador Daniel Kurtz this morning in his presentation. He was very eloquent in presenting a strategy to move ahead in order to try to achieve something within this difficult year. And it's not enough for the American role to stay away from this process.
We're going to get back to that in a minute, but I want to follow up on the issue of a certain commonality between the two of you. You both have made the point directly and indirectly that what Geneva did was create a sort of normative standard. You road tested the proposition, even though neither of you were empowered. You road tested the proposition that...
No, they were in power.
Well, empowered in the sense that you were in pursuit of an agreement that could somehow be implemented by Israelis and Palestinians. I mean, there's a difference between empowered negotiators who are accountable and responsible to political constituencies and track two diplomacy, of which Geneva is a part, even though, as Sami rightly points out, there were a lot of participants in Geneva who also participated in the official formal diplomacy. But my point is this: if in fact the reality is that everybody, I'm not so sure I agree with this, but that everybody knows, more or less, what the solution is on the core issues, borders, Jerusalem, security, and refugees. There's now a fifth element that the Israelis have added. But let's stick with those four. That a combination of what happened in Camp David, the Clinton parameters, Taba, the Geneva Accords, the Olmert, Abu Mazen conversations, has now created a new normative standard on all of these issues. Then a logical person would then conclude that the real problem is not clever or even wise diplomatic fixes to these, but the absence of the right politics and the absence of will. The absence of politics and the absence of will. So I want to, in a sort of reverse role-playing, I want to ask you my next question. This is actually could prove quite instructive if you're prepared to be open about this. I'm going to ask you to identify, in your view, what are the problems, as you see them, on the Palestinian side with respect to Palestinian politics and will. That is to say, if in fact a solution is known, what is the dysfunction on the Palestinian side to getting there, in your view?
Well, right now it is very clear on the Palestinian side, which I agree with Samir, could have signed such an agreement. Mutatis mutandis. I cannot speak on behalf of Abu Mazen, but for sure he was behind the things. I myself informed him several times during our negotiations about those things, and I believe that the Palestinian side, we have here Reit al-Omari, who was one of the two drafters of the agreement and worked on it very intensively. I know that they informed Abu Mazen all along. But there is a different picture today. And the picture is that Gaza was actually kidnapped by Hamas. And it creates several problems. One, the idea of a corridor, the safe passage between the West Bank and Gaza, which appears in all those agreements or suggestions, cannot be implemented when Gaza is controlled by Hamas totally. Another point is the land swaps. All the land swaps, almost all of them in the Geneva Initiative, and we are speaking about 2.25%, all in all, it's a very small one, are around Gaza. We increased Gaza by 50% in the agreement. And if the situation is as it is today, I don't see anybody who is suggesting to increase Gaza of Hamas. And the last point is that if Hamas is saying, or quoted at least, that if there is an agreement, there should be a referendum, and they will follow the decision of the people. I am not sure about it, let us say so. I think that they will find always some problems with the referendum, that it doesn't include Syria or Lebanon or Iraq or whatever, and so it is not kosher. And I don't believe that the Palestinian leadership today, the PLO leadership, can bring Hamas's acquiescence to the table. Which means that if, for example, I or somebody like me is tomorrow the Prime Minister of Israel, we will go to the Geneva Initiative, sign an agreement, but we'll have to implement it only in the West Bank. And it will be a permanent agreement with a partial implementation because of what is happening on the Palestinian side right now. I believe, and you didn't ask me, so I will not answer, that the impediments on the Israeli sides are bigger.
Right. We're going to get to that right now. So in your view, the single most challenging obstacle that the Geneva Accords or any two-state solution faces are fundamental divisions within the Palestinian house.
It's more than divisions. It is the fact that physically you cannot bring Gaza to the table.
Right, and it may also be politically and philosophically, but geographically, that's your contention.